Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Before we start with the video, I'd like to wish everyone happy holidays and Merry Christmas if you're celebrating. Also, this will be the last video of the year, so I thought I would do a top 10 of all the books I read in 2017 and kind of walk you through them in a countdown order. A little disclaimer, these aren't books that were published in 2017. I don't think I've bought newly published books in the last few years. So if you're looking for those, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And also, if I'm speaking in such a weird way, it's probably because of my giant ulcer over here. You won't be able to see them, trust me, you don't want to, but just know that it's there. And I'm going to be pulling a bit of a Snape situation where it'll be like, open to page 298. So I hope you will still be able to understand me. We'll start with number 10, which is Morgen by Stefan Ahnhem. It is a German translated Swedish crime novel that tells the story of Fabian Frisk, a police officer or police detective who has to move back to Helsingborg from Stockholm following a scandal that almost tore his family apart. And then he's quickly welcomed by a murder case that involves his old classmate at his old school. At first he doesn't really want to get involved because he is technically still on vacation, but he then quickly gets dragged in when it is quickly becoming a serial murder case and he is likely the next victim. I think the story is really beautiful because it's kind of like a labyrinth where you don't expect to see twists and turns everywhere you go. It has quite an unexpected ending with very beautiful flow, and the character development is also very well done. But I wouldn't recommend this to those of you who may get squirmish of the thought of violent deaths, gory scenes and bloody crime scenes. But if you're a bit of a psychopath like me, welcome. Number 9, we have Wir Kinder vom Bahnhof Zoo by Christiane F. This is also another German novel, but it's a memoir of the authors. So it tells the story of Christiane's life around 12 to 16-year-old when she is involved in the drug scene in 1970s Berlin. The title means we're children of Bahnhof Zoo, and Bahnhof Zoo is like the it place to get drugs in 1970s Berlin. The story reveals slowly how Christiane starts dabbing in drugs and then trying heroin, and how then she gets hooked up and how it slowly ruins her life. It really shows how far and how low a person would go to be able to get their daily fix of heroin. So if you ever want to try drugs, or if you know someone who wants to try drugs, you should probably read this book first and see how scary it can get. On number 8, we have The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. I know this book has been published a long time ago, but I just recently bought it. A lot of you may know that this is a book on zombie apocalypse. I've mentioned this in a previous video, which I will link to somewhere on the screen and down below in the description box, where I said I would describe this as a mix between Room by Emma Donoghue and Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. It is told through the eyes of Melanie, a 10-year-old who thinks her life is normal even though she lives in a cell in an army base. And every morning soldiers have to pick her up to go to class and escort her back to her cell, and she's always strapped to a chair. Yeah, you might realize that, wait, she might not be entirely human. And then one day the army base where she lives gets attacked by zombies, and she, along with her favorite teacher, a soldier, and a doctor have to work together to be able to survive in the outside world. At the same time, Melanie has to kind of deal with her biological identity. What's so different about this book and a lot of other zombie apocalyptic stories is that usually there's an us and a them, the humans and the zombies. But with Melanie's existence, it kind of bridges the differences between them significantly. I think the sequel came out this year as well. I haven't read that yet, but I'm so intrigued to read it. On number 7, we have Bajak, Laut, dan Purnama Terakhir by Adhitya Mulya. If you can't tell from the title, it is Indonesian, and if you're an Indonesian, you might know the author from Jhumpa, which is his most popular work. It's been turned into a film and actually remade this year. This is, however, different from his other works that I know of because it's a historical fiction, but told in such a comedic way. Apparently, it's been a passion project of his. Who knows? So the story kind of reminds me a little bit of Pirates of the Caribbean, but with a lot of beautiful Indonesian touches, such as Javanese myths and Dutch colonialism. The story revolves around three parties who at first didn't feel like they had anything to do with each other, but then their lives connect in the end. Or not even like in the end, but somewhere in the middle. There is the pirate crew led by Bajak, which is kind of a loser pirate crew. They still try to prove themselves to like the more mighty pirates. And then there's the three Aryas, or three ancient warriors, who are looking for ancient magical artifacts that they need to save the world. And the third one is basically the Dutch, who may also be on the trail of the artifacts without exactly knowing what it's for. The jokes are very well done. They're not trying too hard, and they're not inappropriate in any way, and they're well placed that they don't feel overflowing or out of place and doesn't destroy the story. I also love that Adhitya Mulya seem to have put a lot of research into this work, because there are a lot of historical insights that we don't learn at school, and definitely very interesting to learn. On number 6 we have I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. I also mentioned this in a previous video, which I will link to on the screen here somewhere and in the description box down below. It is one of the best young adult novels I've ever read. It's so beautiful. It tells the story of a set of twins, a boy named Noah and a girl named Jude, who deal with sibling rivalry and parents' favoritism and fitting in, you know, like teenager stuff. It is told through each of their perspectives, but in different timelines. So Noah tells the story in the past and Jude tells the story in the future, and something happens in between that changed their lives forever. I love the way that the author kind of tells us how Jude and Noah think, in which Jude is through paintings while Jude is in quotes. So usually quotes from her grandmother's magical Bible. On number 5 we have How to Get Filthy Rich in Rising Asia by Mohsin Hamid. Don't be fooled by the title. It is not a self-help book or a satire, although it is told as if it is a self-help book, with the main character being named You. So it's as if it's your life. Obviously it is not. Each chapter is beautifully segmented to be like tips, so each chapter is each tip. So the story is about this young man who wants to move out of poverty that he lives in and goes to the big city and be successful, basically. But he also meets a young woman who wants to do the same and want to become famous in a big city, and how their love for each other kind of developed despite not really knowing each other all that well, through their pursuit to become successful. Although the story and the way the narrator tells it feels as if the narrator just wants money and really doesn't care about anything else, the story is unexpectedly thoughtful and it's really well done. It's set in Lahiri, and you might have some feels about it in the end. On number 4 we have Gana Must Go by Taiye Selasi. I've mentioned this book on a previous video that I would have had in the description down below. And it is a unique, compelling and raw story of family that opens up with the father dropping dead. It would have been obviously sad if the father hadn't walked out on his wife and children in the past. So now when the news reaches the wife and children, they kind of struggle on how to react to it. So he has 4 children, an oldest son, 2 twins, a boy and a girl, and the youngest girl. And when the news reaches them separately, they kind of struggle to find a reaction to that individually, because they have very different relationships and feelings about their father. And as the story goes, it also reveals the different impact and effects the father's action had on them. So what happens after the father left, and how that affects their life and their emotion and characteristics and so on. It's very beautifully done, and it feels very real, and it also talks a lot about the culture that they live in and the siblinghood and what it means to actually be a family. In third place, we have A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki. So I've been wanting to read this book for the last 3 to 4 years, and I finally managed to do that this year. I am so glad. It is nothing like any book I've ever read. It really catches me off guard. I don't know what to expect from it, and it's very rooted in Zen Buddhism. The story starts with Ruth finding a plastic bag washed ashore with a Hello Kitty lunchbox in it, and within which there are a diary, a few letters, and another diary, which seems to have washed up from Japan. As Ruth reads the diary, she follows the story of now a Japanese high school girl who lives in Tokyo and who reveals stories about her life, such as about bullying and suicide and other cultural situations like that. The complex part about this book is that we don't know if this book is real, because some parts of it are so far-fetched that they can't be real, but it's written as if Ruth Ozeki, the author herself, finds these things and experience all these situations. On second place, we have The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri. You might have seen in my previous video that I talked about her other works called The Lowland. After that, I was just so intrigued to try her other works, and so I bought this secondhand. The Namesake deals with pretty much the same things as The Lowland, but it focuses on something else entirely. Whereas in The Lowland, it's more about siblinghood and about family and love. In The Namesake, it's very focused on cultural identity. It starts with the main character Ashoki. Indians, please help me, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Who wants to go as far as he can go after a very life-changing event in his past. So he decides to go study in the US. But before he goes, he's betrothed to Ashima, who is willing to go wherever he wants to go. She doesn't mind. So they both move to the US, and that's where they build a family. That's where they give birth to children and raise them and so on. But soon they find problems. They start to realize that it's not going to be exactly the same as it was when they lived in India, or if they had lived in India. And also along with that comes the problem of the children being unable to relate to India, because they are essentially American. They were born and they were raised and they have their daily lives and friends, everyone they knew in the US. It really brings up the question of who are you in that sense? Like, are you an Indian? Are you an American? And what does it mean? So number 1, oh wow, that is a big title to carry, don't you think? I'm actually very scared to tell you about number 1. What if you think, why is that number 1? Why can't number 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever be number 1? I think that's the best one. And you know what? You can say that's number 1. This is just my preference. But here are 3 reasons why the number 1 is the number 1, before even telling you the title or the author. 1. This book is a true story. It is the memoir of the author's own experience, riddled with research on the subject matter. So this isn't made up at all. Number 2, this book deals with a lot of subject matters. It's not just about one field, it's basically about all the fields that come in contact with the author's experience. So it really covers a lot of bases. Number 3, this book teaches me a lot of things. There is a lot of information in this book that I feel like we should have known, because it has a huge impact on a lot of people. And it's very unbelievable that it should have made the headline news, but for some reason I don't think it did. No one I know have ever brought it up. So, what is this book, you ask? It is The Devil That Danced on the Water by Aminatta Forna. It is Aminatta Forna's memoir. It tells the story of her father, actually, through her own experience and through the experience of her family and friends and so on. Aminatta Forna's father was actually first a doctor, and in a small village like where they live in Sierra Leone, a doctor is very, very important. So everybody loved him, and he does a lot of pro bono works to help people and so on. So obviously he is a very respected and loved figure. And then one day he decides to go into politics because he feels the government is being a dictator and he wants to change his country. That begins the story of him being hunted down and being martyred for a lot of reason, and in the end results in his disappearance. To this day, no one really knows where he's gone, but it is very likely that he is killed and buried somewhere nobody knows. This is not a spoiler, by the way. It is mentioned in the first 2 chapters, and it is kind of the prominent story of this book. About the political situation, it's so dark that it includes a lot of genocide and a lot of massacres and dictatorship. It's so bad that at some point no country in the world would want to exchange their currency for Sierra Leonean currency. And to think that we've never heard of this use at all is baffling to me, because it is so huge and heartbreaking. So I'm sorry to end on such a low note. I hope you like that. Let me know in the comments which are your top 10 books of 2017, and if you have read any of these books or want to read some of them, please let me know what you think of them down in the comments below. Also, there is a blog post about books that I want to read in 2018 that I will link to in the description, but they will most likely not be books that are published in 2018, because let's be honest, I won't be able to buy newly published books anyway. And before I go, I wanted to wish everybody Happy New Year, and I hope that you get to do everything you wanted to this year, and that you will want to do more things in the next year. Okay, then I guess that's it for this video, and I'll see you next year. Bye! And this is the second time I filmed in my pajamas, but I think this is quite cute, so why not, right? I hope you guys don't notice that I haven't actually showered.